I'll start and I'll introduce myself. My name is Diana Yousef. I'm the founder of Change Water Labs, and we are trying to curb the problem of unmanaged sewage in non-sewered communities, cleaning up these communities by shrinking poop by 10 times. So we actually, we know some of my friends from the social impact arena are here, and they knew that we came up with this maybe a year ago, shrink wrap for crap, so that's kind of what we call it. So sorry for those who have heard that. So I guess I'm going to start off with talking a little bit about me. That's my professional path, so I wouldn't really recommend this for anybody, but I started life as a biochemist and kind of felt, I was trapped in this lab, playing with bacteria and yeast at like 3 in the morning on Saturdays, and it wasn't really fun. And I was always sort of wondering, how can I actually get out there and have more impact in the world? So actually, Columbia was really a good turning point for me, because after I finished my PhD, I applied and did the joint degree at the business school in SIPA, and used Columbia as a real laboratory for trying to kind of explore how can business be a force for good in the developing world. So I was kind of trying to bring together all these sort of passions that I had, and Columbia was a great sort of laboratory for that. I don't know how many of you are involved with the International Development Club or Pangea, but I started something that ended up becoming those, and really tried to use that as a crowdsourcing effort to get other people's ideas to help influence me on how can I do this. And then sort of, apparently I didn't find the answer, because then I bounced around between the private sector and the development sector for a number of years. And then 5 years ago, I had a moment when I had my first daughter, and I figured if I'm going to keep working, I really just want to work on stuff that consumes my soul and really means something. Otherwise, why would I outsource my kid to other people if I'm working for other people on crap that I don't care about? So, so I decided to work on other crap, but so I've, and I kind of, sort of, I mean, the slide looks really clean, but this was kind of, a process of cogitating that took years, and it's still a work in progress. But I kind of thought, I'm circling around these 3 areas. I'm really interested in science and technology. I'm really sort of passionate about development, and I think kind of the best way to solve these problems is through enterprise. And then on top of that, my parents are from the Middle East, and big problem in the Middle East and all over the world is water sustainability and access. So I picked that as the problem I wanted to focus on, and I figured, how do I triangulate with these 3 interests? And that's kind of where the idea of Change Water came from. It's basically, the idea is to become an accelerator for frugal innovation that increases water sustainability and access for the poor. And the first problem that we wanted to work on is essentially sanitation for the poor and the vulnerable. And let me just show you a picture that kind of caught my attention and drove a lot of our thinking. This is the Za'atari refugee camp. It's the 2nd largest refugee camp in the world. It houses about 80,000 to 100,000 Syrian refugees. And these are people that lived in sort of middle-class situations, and now they're living in a destitute condition in the desert of Jordan. And take a look at that pit right there. Well, that's what they have to use for sanitation. So when UNICEF and UNHCR came in and set up the camp, they set it up to specs where they set up these communal toilets, 50 people to 1 toilet. This was a complete fail for the Syrian and Middle Eastern cultural context. People did not want to walk on average 2 kilometers to go use the toilet, wait in line, and then women and children were finding that when they go and use these toilets at night, they're getting attacked. So what families started doing was digging pit latrines, unlined pit latrines next to their tents and caravans, and just draining them through these open trenches. So clearly, this is hugely a threat to health in the camp. And also, this camp sits on top of an important Jordanian aquifer. So the Jordanians are literally crapping themselves about what's going to happen to their water supply. And the administrators of the camp don't have a really good solution for distributed sanitation for these types of situations. They also don't have a way to solve sort of the increasing sort of crisis response that they have to administer in urban areas and coastal areas where pit latrines don't work. So if we step back at the, sort of globally, this is a huge issue just generally. 40% of the world's population doesn't have access to dignified or safe sanitation. And poor sanitation leads to about 80% of all disease in the world, about 4% of all deaths, and you have an incidence of every 20 seconds a child dies due to poor sanitation. So that's kind of the big picture. It's worse for women and girls. It actually, beyond just the health impacts of poor sanitation, you have women and girls being subject to high rates of violence in a lot of these areas because they don't have a safe private place to go. And on top of that, this is extending into hijacking their futures because 20 to 40% of girls are dropping out of school because they don't have access to toilets at their schools. So this problem actually touches almost every aspect of these people's lives and futures. Basically, what Change Water decided to do was figure out, if we're going to be dealing with a regime of distributed unmanaged sewage, what's a good way to think about this? Well, one thing that we thought about is, could we just shrink the problem? So sewage is apparently about 90 to 95%, or 90 to 90% water. If we could find a cheap, passive way to vaporize that water, we shrink the problem by 90%. And this is, this is how we do it. So this is a picture of our technology. We're using a membrane that passively absorbs and vaporizes water. This is actually an available technology. It's being used in the medical device industry as a coating, a no-dust coating. We're repurposing it for a completely different application where basically what it does is it absorbs the water, and that absorbed water is then released into the air as vapor. It's fast. Basically, it can absorb 10 to 20 liters per square meter per day. It's cheap. It costs about 4 cents a square meter. And as I said, it's proven and available as being commercialized in the medical device industry. We're just repurposing it. It's basically like distillation or evaporation, but without the huge energy cost. So I'm going to hopefully, let's see if this video works. So that's just a demo. This is over the course of 3 hours. These are 3 formulations of the polymer, and it's evaporating the water passively. So essentially, you've got vapor coming out. That's not what you think it is. That's coffee. And so we're currently testing it to see if we can get this to work in sort of all the different atmospheric conditions that we could want to serve. And this is our toilet concept. We haven't developed this yet. This is going to be something that we hope to prototype next year. The idea is a portable toilet with a removable rolling drum. Inside the drum would be layerings of our membrane. And the way it would be used is that people would sit on it and do their business. The solid and the liquid would accumulate in this chamber that's lined with the membrane, and essentially the liquid would be absorbed into the membrane and evaporated, released into the air. So essentially what you're doing is you're shrinking the crap down to 1/10 of its volume. This would achieve complete hygienic containment, and would also what you'd have is collected in there is solids. And so the solids would require a collections network. Something happened to my slides. I'm sorry about that. But the collections network even though that looks like it's inconvenient, right now, current collection services for these types of things, they have to visit every household every 2 or 3 days. We're hoping to get that down to 1 time per month, thereby reducing 30 to 50% of their operating costs and extending the access of toilets to every home so that people can have dignified sanitation. I think I'm out of time, right? I don't know. I saw a 30-second sign. Am I out of time? Okay, great. Well, I mean, I'm done. So, so that's essentially, so we hope you'll get behind the vision and help us change water. I'm happy to answer any questions. I've had a long, meandering journey to sort of getting to this point, and it's still a work in progress. So I'm happy to talk to people about the trials and tribulations. Okay, thank you.